the First 30 Days, sponsored by the Georgetown University Alumni Association and Alumni Career Services. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. My name is Sarah Hay, Assistant Director of Alumni Career Services, and our presenter today is Devin George, COO of Prolific Interactive. Today's webinar is the second in our webinar series where we're co-sponsoring with the Entrepreneurship Alliance. I'm not sure how many of you attended last month's webinar with Melissa Bradley discussing social entrepreneurship, but we're very excited about this series and so glad that Devin can be here to talk about the startup. But before we begin, I'd just like to share a few housekeeping tips and reminders. Today's presentation is being recorded. You can access the replay of this webinar within 3 business days on our YouTube channel. Just go to youtube.com and search Georgetown Alumni Career Services, or go to the alumni website, look through our webinar archive from there, and it will take you to YouTube. There are 2 audio options. You can listen via your computer speakers or dial into the conference bridge number provided. You are not required to have a headset, but welcome to use one. It is important to note if you experience audio difficulties while listening via your computer speakers, this can be caused by having multiple software applications open. Feel free to close some of these applications or simply join us via the conference bridge number provided in your reminder email. Questions are welcome. Please type in your questions in the question area on the GoToWebinar control panel screen. Devin is planning to answer as many questions as time will allow during the Q&A portion at the end of the presentation. I will email everyone PowerPoint slides afterwards. If you're having any technical difficulties, please submit those concerns to me via the chat area if possible. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Devin. Devin is a graduate of the MSB School of 2001. And as I said, he's COO of Prolific Interactive, a mobile agency based in Brooklyn, New York. He's also president of DMV Capital Corp, a hedge fund, and a founding member of the Georgetown Entrepreneurship Alliance. Devin has built 3 companies from the ground up, creating hundreds of jobs, and currently leverages a growing portfolio of 20 startups and small businesses based upon mutually beneficial business opportunities. You can visit his LinkedIn profile by going to the Alumni Career Services events page and looking at this webinar if you want to look through and see a little bit more about Devin. Also, if any of you are members of our alumni LinkedIn group, Devin is one of our managers, and you'll see he's a frequent poster on there. So I encourage you to check out some of the many fascinating articles he puts up there. But Devin, thank you for joining us today. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Sarah. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for being on. And I'm really excited to be part of this Alumni Career Services and Alumni Association webinar series on entrepreneurship and startups. There's definitely more to come, so please stay tuned. But for today, I just want to jump into the topic at hand, starting up the first 30 days. And a little note here is a PDF of this presentation will be sent to you later. So if there are any links or additional information that you need, you should get it later by via email. So let's jump into it. Starting up the first 30 days. My name is Devin George. Like Sarah said, I'm class of 2001. My first job out of Georgetown was as an early startup employee at an e-commerce company based on Long Island. I am a startup employees advocate on and off campus. That means I go to a lot of events. I speak to a lot of Hoyas who either want to get involved in startups, entrepreneurship, or already are, and try to leverage their talents and successes to further give all of us opportunities to learn and grow really in what is the foundation of our country, which is small business and entrepreneurship. Right now I'm working with mobile startups through Prolific, as Sarah said, in Brooklyn, New York. And I live in Manhattan, work in Brooklyn, and I love being here. So jumping right into a great quote, and there'll be a few of these along the way. Running a startup is like being punched in the face repeatedly. But working for a large company is like being waterboarded. So, and if any of you don't know Paul Graham, he is a prolific co-founder, investor, and kind of a teacher around startups and entrepreneurship. And some of us who have worked at large companies, we feel that we want to start something new, we want to get involved in something interesting, entrepreneurship is a growing trend and it's very exciting. But also you have to realize that running a startup is not going to be as easy or as romantic as it can sound every day or read those TechCrunch or Business Insider articles. But it's definitely something that should not be taken lightly. So the first question would really be, is starting up for you? And really the basis for trying to figure that out is really knowing yourself. And that comes down to two main areas. Personality. Personality is important because having the right characteristics and the right proper character really help you in reducing your risk and increasing your chances of successes when you start your own business. Questions like, how do you react to failure? And are you ever satisfied? These are really important to consider. A lot of people aren't honest with themselves when they want to start a company or they have an idea for a product and they think that they can do anything because they're used to operating in certain environments. So if you never founded a company, you really have to step back and analyze your personality to understand if this is the right experience for you. And as you'll see later on in the appendix, which this presentation will also be emailed to you, there's a link to an entrepreneur personality test, which will give you even more questions that you can answer to see if you are the right type of person to be embarking on this great journey that is starting a business. Also really important in terms of knowing yourself is knowing what resources you have available to yourself. And actually this is probably the most important part of this presentation. Knowing your professional experience. Is it related to what you would like to start? Who you've worked with in the past, what those industries can offer to your vision and your idea, and specifically as you dive into your network. So really building up solid relationships, knowing the right people to ask the right questions to, making sure that they're available to you. This includes family and friends. This is a difficult process, and along the way you're going to need a lot of help. So really taking account of who's in your network, how you can properly leverage them, and making sure that when you communicate with them, it's not like you're asking a favor out of the blue. You want to start talking to people, be honest with them, and really make sure that you're not ashamed to share or ask questions or favors with them. And then your financial security. A lot of people think that they should just quit their job tomorrow, day job tomorrow, and start a business because it's really exciting, and they told a few people and they think it's a cool idea. Well, that's unfortunately that doesn't usually work out very well for a lot of people, especially people with families. It gets very challenging, and it's really painful to see, really smart, nice people try to get involved in startups or entrepreneurship and run into that brick wall where they say all of a sudden, I quit my great job that was paying all the bills and giving me this nice lifestyle, and now I'm eating ramen out of the cup and never going on vacation. And all of a sudden people tend to, even if they are enjoying the business part of it, their personal life really struggles, and it can be painful. So taking account of your financial security before jumping into a startup or a small business is really important. And that's kind of the last line there. Don't quit your day job unless you can afford not to be paid for a long time. This is it's different for everybody else. It depends on your lifestyle. I really advocate for people having a strong grasp on their personal finance. If you don't, even if you aren't going to work for a startup, I think everyone really needs to make sure that they know their personal budgets, financial planning. These are things that you can do for yourself using Excel and a few bank statements. And you should talk to your accountant if you do need help, or even just Google it to see what are certain tactics that you can use to figure out what are your abilities to transition in jobs and careers. And this transition into startups and founding your own company can be very financially taxing and can really be painful. And we don't want things to be too painful for you. So before I jump to the next slide, you'll notice on the lower right-hand corner I created a little calendar. And the first 2 days, and this is going to be flexible depending on who you are and what you're trying to accomplish, but the first 2 days are kind of dedicated to knowing yourself, figuring these things out. And again, you got to be honest with yourself. Is this right? Talk to your significant other, maybe your parents or your friends. Get some reality test on whether this is something you should be doing. And I dedicated 2 days to it because you don't want to decide all in one day. Sleep on it, see if your perspective changes, and make sure you talk to a bunch of people. So let's jump to another quote. Walt Disney, awesome guy, co-founder of Disney. You might have heard of him. The way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing. So this is what a lot of us would like to do, but don't get a chance to do every day. Walt was an awesome guy. He did a lot of things, and this is an awesome quote. So let's jump into the first real 3 days of work out of these 30 days to start up. What is your vision idea? Vision and idea. Why did you pick the industry and the business concept that you've chosen? Are you solving a very specific problem? Is it a big problem? Is there enough demand and margin in your product to sustain or scale? Who's the competition? Are they big? Are they small? Do they not exist? There's definitely benefits to all three of those in terms of how you approach executing against this opportunity or this vision that you have. Name it something simple. Don't waste time on this because later on you could change it. But at least when you start envisioning what you're going to do, developing a product and telling people about it, you do need to have some kind of name or something that embodies and really gives you something tangible to the table. So when you're having these discussions, you can say, hey, this is X, Y, Z. And then all of a sudden they can refer back to you and you're actually talking about something that should or does exist. That name really is a good starting point. So don't waste time on it. You can change it later. A lot of people freak out, think they need the #1 name in the world. Don't worry about it. Just think about something simple, even if it's just a very specific name that describes what you do. That's enough. And then also in these first 3 days, I would make sure you nail down an initial value statement and an elevator pitch. Now, these don't have to be perfect. You're going to update them and adjust them and fill them, and over time it's going to change a lot potentially. But the idea is, as you start developing this vision and nailing it down, you need to get some words on paper. You need to be able to describe to people what it is, what to say. This is so important. A lot of people stumble when they're trying to describe what their vision is or the benefits of it. And in the beginning, it's not going to be easy. So the idea is, in these first 3 days, say it out loud, say it to somebody very close to you, see if it's gobbledygook or if it makes some sense. If it makes some sense, you're on the right path. The idea is to keep refining it, and remember that you're selling yourself. So no matter what your vision or idea is, if you aren't confident and you aren't humble and listening to people and asking questions, no one's ever going to believe in your vision. They're going to be afraid of it because it's really about execution. And people actually execute and build upon vision and ideas. So remember that you're selling yourself during this elevator pitch. So when you're talking to people, be confident, but ask questions, and really start to get down this tone and feeling of dealing with people that is going to be a huge benefit in the future, because people want to interact with people who ask questions. They want to be part of something that people get excited about. They want to talk to you if you're confident. They want to listen. And it really comes back to who you are and how you interact with people. So elevator pitch, value statement for the vision and idea is about the business. And for yourself, when you practice that, it's really important to nail that down. Next, learn quickly. This is all about learning. The reason you're here today is because you want to learn new things. As you approach this new vision and idea and talk to people about it, you're going to have to do a lot of research, a lot of listening, a lot of reading, and a lot of traveling potentially, depending on what you'd like to do. So number one is definitely sign up for some newsletters. There's so many awesome newsletters out there, blogs, etc. And in the appendix, I have a list that you can sign up for, and they get delivered to your email inbox, or you can get the RSS feed. But the idea is start reading. See what people are talking about in startup land in general. What are the best practices? What are the biggest pitfalls? All this, what you learn from these best practice newsletters will be worlds of education beyond what you would have gotten by just trying to figure it out yourself. And you also start to learn who the important people are in startups. These people who invest in startups or have been involved in a lot of startups. And that's probably the most important thing, is you start to get a real sense of who is saying what, best practices, and then eventually when you start to get into the fold, you can speak to it. You say, oh yeah, I read those newsletters, or I got that one, and I saw this update. And all of a sudden you're speaking with people as opposed to listening to people, and that's becomes really valuable. Also, log into the potential competitors. including winners and losers in your industry. You want to see what's going on. Again, you're learning. You want to see who's doing what, how it works, where they do it, why people like it, why people don't like it. This is, again, a really important part of learning quickly. They might have newsletters. They might have reports that they're public that you can sign up for. You can sign up for Google Alerts, which will send you anytime that something's posted on the internet about a company. But the more you kind of get in the flow of understanding how they communicate with their customers, what they're selling, what works, what doesn't work, the more you'll learn about the right way to position and build your business. And then, this is a controversial topic, but I think there's real benefit in starting a business plan, writing a business plan. And this is really more for you. It's not as much for investors, though. Some investment competitions and some investors will ask for business plans, but really this is, in the beginning, it's for you. Again, we're learning quickly. We want to see if you can, one of two ways this can go is it helps you plan ahead when you're writing this business plan. You anticipate potential marketing, management, and financial problems, and in doing this, you decrease your likelihood of failure. So I highly recommend, it doesn't have to be a 100-page business plan. It could be a skeleton of a business plan in the beginning, but at least understand what it takes to run a business, what that business might look like in 6 months from now, a year from now, et cetera. And it really helps you figure out what the important parts are. So when you start talking to people, you've actually done some of the research and put it on paper, and you can speak to it. Whether it's right or wrong, we'll find out later, but at least you're starting to plan it and put it down and think about it. And then again, if you're running this business plan, you decide that it's not profitable, or it's in a bad industry, or it's not cost effective, then maybe you decide to opt out. But if you haven't done this initial research, learned about the opportunity presented and what it's going to take to maybe get it where you want it to go, you're doing yourself a great disservice. So business plan in the beginning is for you. Eventually, maybe it's for investors, but in the very beginning, while you're learning, it just gives you a chance to put everything on paper in a structured way to learn if this is going to be the right idea. Another awesome quote, talk to your customers, find out what they need. Don't pay attention to the competition. They're not relevant to you. Your customers are your market. I mean, it's pretty clear and straightforward. The question of not paying attention to your competition is also somewhat controversial, but I think there's definitely some very specific instances where you don't need to. We can get more into that later, but keep an eye on the competition, but don't let them distract you. Learn from them, but don't let them guide how you develop your business. And we're starting to get into the middle of the first 30 days, and this is going to be probably the one thing that's going to continue to be the more important part of your business going forward, is networking. We talked a little bit in the beginning about taking account of your network, figuring out who you know, but now is a chance to really dig in and get out there, meet, and share with people. Industry peers, people who work in the industry that you want to work in, potential partners, figuring out where they go, who they meet with, how to get in touch with them, potential employees. It's good to meet them early, figure out who the right type of people to work with based upon what you're developing. And mentors. Mentors are a huge, huge piece of this. If you can find good mentors, your likelihood of success goes way up, and likelihood of failure goes way down. They can help plug you into all the people above, industry peers, partners, employees, and eventually, potentially, investors if that's the route that you decide to take. Mentors can have there can be a few different types of mentors, but two very important types of mentors are mentors with industry experience and contacts, and previous founders to help you guide the uncertainties of starting a business in this area, or starting a business at all if you haven't founded a company before, because there are many pitfalls that most of us don't know about until we get there. So if they can help you see those in the beginning, that's very helpful. You save a lot of time, effort, and money and pain. Definitely go to meetups, panels, conferences, and Georgetown events. Meetup.com is a must. And you should definitely, later on when you get this through email, click through into finding the Georgetown groups on alumni.georgetown.edu. That's a great resource. Find your local groups, find national groups. You can go online. Like Sarah said, there's the Entrepreneurship Alliance, there's Venturing Hoyas, and some of these will have events in very specific areas, but there's always good content and networking to be done online. So definitely get involved in those areas. Hoyas love to help Hoyas. That's part of what I do, and I'd love to see everyone else on this call doing that as well. And then the last piece of this, the very easy piece that, and there's always more to networking, but something that works very well for me and for many, many other people is LinkedIn. And when I say gracefully ravage LinkedIn, I'm really saying you're going to be on LinkedIn a lot. You got to take advantage of it. You got to leverage it. You're going to think that you're asking for too much at certain points, but that's good. You want to ask for too much. You want to find new connections. You want to reach out to people who maybe don't know you, but do it gracefully. There's right ways and wrong ways to use LinkedIn. And if you use it the wrong way, you're going to get no traction. You're going to piss people off. So number one is find valuable connections, and number two is figure out why would they want to connect with you. They're not going to connect with you just because you want to connect with them. It's really a sales game here. You have to provide some value to them, and there's really, really good courses on how to use LinkedIn. I think even a previous Alumni Career Services webinar from last year, and I highly recommend you become a LinkedIn ace. All right, and this is kind of the exciting part. This is where, for me in this process, you're in the middle of the month, you've nailed down a lot of the words that you like to use, the vision, you're really starting to figure out, what you want to do. And now it really comes back to being able to network appropriately, share yourself, and connect with people. So a few simple steps. You could buy a domain name and post a landing page. You get the URL. You can do that through GoDaddy. It's pretty cheap. And when I say a landing page, I don't mean any fancy website. You just want a place where people can go, maybe see your vision in a few words, and then that's it. So pretty much you're doing this so you can get email. You can. I recommend using Google for Business. About $70 a year. You get awesome email if you get on your phone, you get it on your computer, you can get it anywhere through the web. You get access to documents, etc. It's a great, great service. And then get some business cards. And this is usually where people get excited because they want to make a logo and they want to do some really creative stuff, which is good. But in the beginning, that can get expensive. So I did not include getting a logo made in here, though there's very many awesome ways to do that for not too expensive. But right now, I'm trying to keep it cheap in this discussion. So get some business cards. Vista Print can print you 250 cards for $10. Put your business name on there. If you have a logo, why not? A logo can just consist of you using a different font with your company name. That's good enough for now. It's cheap. You got to be able to hand these business cards out to everybody, including your family, friends, everybody. The more you hand out, the better. The sooner you reorder your business cards, because you ran out, the better. So keep that in mind. And then practice explaining the vision so you can talk the talk. And this kind of goes back to that vision and idea slide that we had before. But again, as you're developing this content, these business cards, this website, the URL, your signature and your email, you want to make sure that you have some words in there, a short sentence or whatever that really helps people grasp initially the way that you're doing business or what you'd like to do. It doesn't have to be perfect, but again, it's a chance for you to practice putting it on paper, telling people about it. So when you go to these events and on your business card it has your catchphrase, you say, this is us, and it makes sense. And even though it might change the ideas, you've got to get it down and keep practicing getting it out there. So this is really awesome, and I think you guys will really like this. Communications. So back to using Gmail. And I missed the link there. I apologize. I'll fix it later. But these are all plugins that you can use, at least the first part, for Gmail that really help you do business. Email reminders. Boomerang is great. Boomerang for Gmail. So you can send an email to somebody, set a reminder. If they don't respond, it will send it back to you and say, hey, John didn't respond to your email after a week. Maybe you want to email him back. So it's a good way to always have reminders. If you send an email, that's not lost in space. You can follow up on it. Yesware is an awesome sales CRM tool. It tells you if someone's opened the email that you sent. It helps you look up information on people. It's really a great way to make sure, again, that your emails aren't lost in space, because you should be going to events and talking to people on the phone, but obviously we all need email. And how do you make email more effective? It could be real time suck if you don't have the right setup for your email. So on to Connect with Social. Reportive is great. It shows you someone who emailed you what their LinkedIn profile is, their Twitter profile, their Facebook profile, their phone number sometimes. It's a great way to not waste time trying to find people who are emailing you. and then auto-manage contacts, write that name. So what it does is it looks at your the emails that you receive, and it creates contacts in your contacts list based upon the people who email you. So if they have a signature that includes their phone number, address, etc., it will automatically add those to your contacts, saves you a lot of time in keeping track of your contacts. And then I just started using Schedule Once. It's for scheduling meetings through the Google Calendar. And it's awesome. So you can say, hey, listen, instead of writing like 10 emails back and forth to people, you write, excuse me, you send them your link to Schedule Once, and they see what your availability is on your calendar. And that's huge because, I mean, in the past, I'm sure we've all written emails back and forth trying to schedule a meeting. Oh, this time doesn't work, that time doesn't work. And that's, again, a waste of time. And the last thing you want to do is waste time. So those are all awesome plugins for Gmail. If you really want to start telling people about your concept and writing, I recommend WordPress. You can set it up for free. You can put your URL over it. So all of a sudden you have a nice website with a decent content management system. And then customer communication. If you really want to start collecting email addresses and sending updates to larger groups, you can use MailChimp. It's very easy to use. It's free in the beginning. And it really helps you stay organized and create good-looking email newsletters. Individual emails to people, obviously you still want to do directly from your own email, but if you use MailChimp, all of a sudden you can have updates to certain groups and keep them updated in a very efficient and classy manner. So we're going to get into a little more scientific stuff. Data beats emotions. This is really important. When in a lot of startups, and this can be frustrating sometimes, depending on who you're speaking with. Though people can be successful when they say things like this, I find that it really causes a lot of problems. And that problem is when I use the word I. So I like this and I like that. I want to do this. I want my product to do that. It's not about me. It's not about I. It's about we or them. They are customers. So in analyzing your customers, getting feedback, figuring out the right ways to do things, it's part of it is about my I and my passion and my vision, but at the end of the day, the data beats emotions. I might believe in something, but my customers, my potential customers, and the market will tell me the right way to do things. So please don't forget that. And that really kind of leads into some best practices, some things that I always tell people to get educated on. And this is different per industry, but some of the concepts definitely go over all industries. So take a few days at this point to learn about lean startup and customer development. Customer development is a scientific approach that can be applied to startups and entrepreneurs to improve their product's success by developing a better understanding of their consumers. And again, this is back to really understanding who your users are, connecting with them, figuring out the right way to interact with them, and getting feedback. And then lean startup is an approach that relies on validated learning, scientific experimentation, iterative product releases to shorten product development cycles, measure progress, and gain valuable customer feedback. Now, this isn't something that you might integrate right away in your business, but you should definitely appreciate the benefits of not wasting a lot of time, getting out there speaking to your customers, and having a scientific approach where if something's not going right, you're able to quickly identify it, adjust how you do things, and hopefully that will increase your chances of success. More importantly, reduce your chances of failure because you won't be working on things that definitely don't work. All right, at this point, and we're getting close to the end of the month, so we want to start putting some of this stuff that we've been working on together. Prepare a pitch deck, and you might not be sending it to investors just yet, but the idea is it helps you gather all the valuable information you have in one place. Practice delivering the messaging around important components of your business, and then even practicing sharing that with people. So whereas before you had your elevator pitch, you know, your one-liners and general discussion, now you're actually ready to tell people about here's the vision going down the line on paper, the most important parts. A lot of this can be taken out of the business plan that you've been developing a little bit of, but eventually it's going to be really important, even if it's just for you, to have this approach and this process nailed down. And that link to Venture Hacks is, I think, a really good way to start developing a deck. It's about 10 to 13 slides, depending on what you want to include in it, but it really gets to the meat of what you want to do And kind of reverse engineering some of that, you'll find out you need financial projections. And projections are just projections. Nobody knows what the right numbers are until they actually happen. But the idea is when you go out to present your opportunity, or as you're doing this research, just as we discussed before in the business plan skeleton, you want to understand, is this going to work? What's the marketplace for it? How much money is there? Are there margins? How am I going to reach customers? Who am I going to hire also? How many people do I need to build this the way I envision it? As a very simple and basic financial projections that you can get going will be awesome research for you to say, listen, this will work. Or maybe I didn't see that before. I need to hire more people here, or try to scale based upon integrating certain software there, et cetera, et cetera. So financial projections are, while they're not going to be perfect, you just got to get them down on paper, figure them out, and then eventually you can adjust and hopefully exceed them. And then you continue to work on the business plan. Again, this is hopefully not something that people are going to ask for, but the more you adjust it, update it, research, and know your stuff, and get deep into that business plan in certain areas, the better you're going to be prepared for answering questions and figuring out if this business is going to be a success, which we want to happen. And then along the way, you're going to get questions and information requested from customers, partners, friends, family, because you've been out talking to people. If those are good questions and they apply and they make you think about what you're trying to do, your vision, your idea, definitely try to create an additional slide in your presentation deck, maybe that you don't show to people immediately, but can be shown later on if you start hearing the same questions. Because if you're starting the same questions, it's an opportunity, but also it's kind of a yellow flag. You want to realize that that's an important question. There's a reason why people are asking it, and you want to make sure you honestly and fully address that. So create additional documents. It can be a Word document. It can be a slide in your pitch deck to address those things. Really, really important. And next 2 days, I would recommend you talk to the legal pros. And this is pretty much to make sure that as you start to structure your business, you may not do it these couple days that I've assigned in these 30 days, but you're actually getting ready, finding the right people to talk to. Ask for references to find a lawyer, ask your friends, ask your family, and look for the fruits of your labor from your networking on LinkedIn to date, or networking in general. You can ask people, who do you use? There's the big firms, there's smaller firms. It's in the beginning, it's not, you don't want to spend too much money, hopefully. But you do want to make sure you get a strong referral or a good referral and some references. And then just so you know, a lawyer who knows your industry can be a huge help. Definitely once you have a lawyer, ask for referrals within the industry. Eventually they can help you with investors, connecting, educating you on different things within your industry. But they actually do a lot of work connecting with a lot of different people, so they can accelerate your networking significantly within your industry. And then I provide a link for legal tips, an article, and you can click through that later. Another awesome quote, you have to pay attention to money, but it shouldn't be about the money. So obviously, we have to pay our expenses, eventually we met investors to scale our business, but in the beginning it's really about your product and your customers, and figuring out, is this the right thing? Is there going to be a big benefit to this? And that's kind of the first 30 days where we're trying to figure out as quickly as possible. But you do want to start getting out there and appreciating that you do need some returns. You are going to have to pay yourself. You are going to have to talk to investors. So again, towards getting to the last week of the month of these 30 days, you want to start to understand fundraising. And I would say, and it's different for everybody, again, so far we're all over the map, but these are just general ideas on best practices. Understand you are not ready to raise money. Maybe you are, I don't know. But the idea is, don't feel too pressured to raise money if you're not ready and people aren't getting it and you don't have the connections. There's a lot of bad things that can happen if you're not ready. But you can prepare yourself to raise, and there's no right time to do it. But once you're fairly well educated in how the process works, then you'll be at a much better place to raise that money, get a good valuation for your business, talk to the right people, find the right investors, because there's a lot of bad investors out there. So understand, I'm saying right now you are not ready to raise money. Maybe you are, but I'm just assuming that you're not. You can learn from previous founders. There's a link there that is a nice presentation from the founder of AngelList. If you don't know that, it's a network of angel investors. There's a few of them out there. But that presentation gives you a little more kind of background and his take on it and how to connect with people. And then you got to know who you can raise money from. The Small Business Administration, grants and loans. You can go out and use debt, your credit cards. I don't recommend that. But in the beginning, if it's not too much money, obviously you can pay for that Google Business setup, et cetera, your business card. It's not a lot, but don't start spending a lot of your own money. That's my recommendation. Friends and family can help you provide some startup capital, angels and VCs. And there's, that's pretty much the big part of the fundraising personalities in the world. There might be more, but if you pay attention to those people, connect with them in the right ways, you could definitely benefit. And then an important thing to consider is your type of company or the industry that you're focused on being funded? If it's hot, that's great. It's easier to find investors, but again, there's more competition in getting them their money as opposed to their money going to somebody else. So, cost benefit, it can help, but also, there's always somebody who wants to invest in something. The question is, where are they? And the more you learn about your industry, go to events and talk to people, the easier it will be to find these people and have a good conversation with them, and they'll be your best friends, your advocates, your heroes, and maybe your investors. All right, so we're getting into 6 days left, or 6 days left. At this point, we could say, let's take a count. Let's get some feedback. What has it been, and what has it been helpful? So you've been talking to a lot of people. Do they get it? Do they not get it? Do they think you're crazy? Do they want they want to hear more? Do they think you're on the right track? All these things, you really have to write it down, understand if it's valuable to people. If they get it, that's great. Keep going. If they don't get it, you're doing something wrong. Adjust. Figure it out. And then networking. Who have you met, and have they been helpful? At this point, hopefully, you haven't had a lot of time, but you've been going out. You've been meeting with people. You've gone to some meetups. That happen all the time. You've been emailing people. You've been asking friends for help. Really, if your network is good, you've probably made a lot of progress in a short amount of time. If you haven't, chances are you really need to work on your network. Go out there, meet some more people, get up to events, talk about it, hone your pitch, figure out what works, what doesn't, and fix it. But really keeping track of those people, back to the tools for Gmail. Who have you been emailing? Do you have their contacts? Are you going to their events? Are they recommending things? You got to make sure that you focus on your network and leverage it as much as possible. And then are you keeping track of your progress? And this kind of goes back to the previous two. Has your network developed? Has your feedback been helpful? Have you adjusted your mission and your idea at all? Have you learned something? Have there been opportunities that you're excited to take advantage of in partnerships, et cetera? So really, if you haven't had some interest or progress at this point from anybody, you definitely have to figure out what's going on. Is it right? Is it wrong? What doesn't work? And then really the last part is, are you happy? So you've had almost 30 days now to figure out whether this vision works. Talk to a lot of people. You're out there. You're drinking a lot of coffee. You're having cocktails. It can be stressful. You're not seeing your family as much. It can be fun. It can be rewarding. But also, if you're not happy or excited at this point and seeing some of that traction, you should definitely figure out whether this is going right, because this is going to only get harder as you go along. These first 26 days or 27 days have been a cakewalk compared to what's going to happen next. And then what's going to happen next? If things are going well, you want to start figuring out, depending on whether you're going to start developing a product or you have cash flow, you might want to start setting up accounting. Most people won't because it's still too early, but that's going to be coming up before too long. You want to make sure you do it right. There's a lot of legal things you have to do to register your business, et cetera. The lawyer should help you with that eventually. You should get an accountant. But obviously that's only if things are going very well, and it's not going to be on the 31st day of starting up. Prepare to hire, back to networking, going to events. If you've been meeting people who have been helpful, they get what you're doing. They might fit into what you'd like to do. They're developers. They have experience in the industry. They're managers, whatever. Figure out if these are the right people for you. Finding a co-founder can be very helpful, depending on what your skill set is. I recommend it. Obviously, it can be very difficult. So if it's something there's benefits and drawbacks to that. But you have to be ready at this point to start figuring out who is going to help you get this to the next step. Prepare to hire. Prepare to pick a co-founder. And then make sure you're legal. There's a business startup checklist that I'll give you a link to. Again, nothing works better than talking to a lawyer. It can be expensive, so you could definitely do some of the work on your own, but you don't want to mess it up. So go through the checklist, make sure you're not missing anything, bring that to your lawyer, say, am I good? Hopefully it's less than an hour. They're not charging you $500 an hour, so you're financially stable. And then fundraising. Keep it going on that path. You understand how to do it. At this point, you're learning more. Keep reading, and get out there and start doing something with fundraising if you need it. And I think I'm ready for questions.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Devin. And everyone, please submit any questions you have. We do have a few already, but we're welcoming more. So Devin, first question, how do you usually go about doing the market research and margin for a product?
No, that's a good question. And it varies greatly based upon the market and the product that you're trying to research. I mean, I'm a big fan of, first of all, just sitting here today, I can Google it. I can see if there's any reports on it, see if anybody's written articles about the industry. You know, how to Google is a different question. If you can Google well, you'll get much better results. I would Google how to use Google. And but then after that, you obviously, you want to get more specific information, insider information. Talk to people who are in the industry. Again, this goes back to the mentoring section, mentoring and networking section earlier on in the presentation. And I'll just scroll back up to that. Industry peers, partners, employers, potential employees, and mentors. The more you get out there and talk to people, the more you can have people who know the answers to these questions. So it's really, you do some of your own research online. It's easy. There's articles. But at the end of the day, the most valuable information is going to come from getting out there and meeting with people and asking them those specific questions. But the hard data sets are probably going to be online. If you ask people those questions individually, who knows if it's accurate, but again, it could definitely shed some light, so I recommend you do both.
Okay, and the next question, how does Yesware compare to Salesforce? Have you used Salesforce before?
Yeah, absolutely. So I love Salesforce. I've used it for a couple different businesses. It's amazing all the things it does, but in the beginning, if you want a light CRM tool that plugs directly into Gmail in a very easy way, I've started using Yesware. It's cheaper, it's easier to use. It's not a complete feature set, so eventually I would probably recommend people get into a Salesforce because it's awesome. But in the beginning, if you want something light that's easy to set up and sign up to, I recommend Yesware.
All right. Okay, so Devin, we have a question about raising external funds. One of the participants is about to start up a business, and they're still keeping their day job, but they weren't planning on even looking for investors until they had at least a year of sales history. The cash flow model is very good, and this person does not need to make major investments now, not until the idea is proven out. Their feeling is to hold off investors as long as possible. What do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. If they can self-fund and get some traction, that's the best way to retain equity as a founder. Also, it makes it much easier to fundraise. If you go to somebody and say, hey, listen, we have this traction, it's exciting, we're seeing the scalability, they're probably going to be more likely to invest or get over one of those concerns that, is this thing going to work? What are the customers saying? So if you have customers and they're paying, that's a great thing. The only drawback to that is if you're not getting the traction that you want, or that traction and those margins don't show the promise that you would hope, your opportunity is going to not look as impressive. So when you go to invest, you say, hey, look at my sales. You have customers, check, great. You're paying customers, awesome, check. But then all of a sudden they say, what's your sales cycle? Does it take long to sell into them? Is it expensive to sell into them? Are they going for your premium products as opposed to your existing products? What's your model? What's working? What's your conversion rates? There's a lot more data there for them to say they don't like it at that point. So there's definitely benefits and drawbacks. I love seeing businesses that have sales, they know the market. A year will probably be, it would be awesome if you're doing well after a year. You'll raise money, no problem, if the numbers look good. But if your numbers aren't pristine and fantastic, you're going to have a significant drop in your potential valuation. So you'll probably still be able to raise money, but instead of a $5 million valuation, you're going to get a $1 million valuation because your metrics are very specific and they point to that valuation.
Okay, and Devin, do you have any guidance on how to determine whether or not an idea is worth pursuing at all?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Good question. Yeah, a lot of it comes down to your passion for it. I mean, this webinar was to say, hey, listen, where do we start? You know, I have so many ideas. What's worth pursuing? And that really comes down to you figuring out what you like the best, and then eventually passing that along to other people and testing it against them. So as we went through these 30 days, the idea is maybe you like this, but maybe you got to day 10 and you've already talked to your family and friends and they're not getting it and you're not seeing it and that business plan isn't showing that it's beneficial. So maybe you stop there. Maybe you start again, start over. So picking the right idea in the beginning really is based upon a feeling, at least on day one, your passion, your excitement for it, what you've been hearing, what you've been reading. And then eventually as you get further into it, you'll be able to better answer that question saying, yeah, I picked the right idea or I picked the wrong idea. In the very beginning, until you actually do some of this thinking and this networking and some of the framework in our discussion, you're not going to really know which idea is the right idea.
Okay, great. And what are your thoughts on minimum viable product strategies?
That's something I use a lot. So my background's in tech, e-commerce. I'm getting involved in mobile, and mobile is very much about MVP or minimum viable product. Minimum viable product, for those who don't know, is pretty much getting a product out there that tests intent and proves a theory as fast as possible. You want to see if it works, see if people click on it, see if people get it. And part of what we did actually in this 30 days is create a minimum viable product around trying to see if your ideas or your vision is good for a startup. I love it. I think it's absolutely the right way to go in 90-something% of cases of building a product or building a business. Eventually it doesn't, but really when you're trying to figure out your business model, figure out if things work, when there's that uncertainty, and there's always uncertainty, but when there's that great level of uncertainty, does the idea work? Will people use this product? You don't want to waste a lot of time and money and resources trying to develop a feature-rich, awesome-looking product, because you deliver it a year from now, you put all that money into it, all that time, and all of a sudden people don't like it. And that's exactly the opposite of MVP. If you, along the way, were putting out different versions of the product, testing to see people click through your email newsletter, always testing, always putting out something with that's the least amount of work to at least see if people will click on things or like things or get it. I think that's the right way to go for startups at least. When you get into bigger business, MVP has benefits and can be fit into new products, but at the end of the day, in terms of business model, MVP is not the way to go.
Okay, Devin, next question. How do you find/compensate a developer without giving away equity?
You got to pay them. Well, yeah, I mean, it's tough. When you're trying to find an early employee, chances are you need to pay them well. And if they know that you're a startup, they're going to expect equity. You can outsource in the beginning. That's becoming a more popular trend. You can, get a development shop to help you build the first version of your product. Hopefully it's MVP. So you're not giving away equity. They're kind of like outsourced employees to avoid that equity piece. But eventually the idea is when you find those really talented people that we referred to in those earlier sections that you've been talking to, who could be employees or a co-founder, or that they're going to want equity. But again, you really want to make sure that you find the right people and you do right by them. So you don't want to give away too much equity. And that's a whole other discussion. What's the right amount of equity for the right type of person at the right time? But probably the easiest way to do it in the beginning is to outsource some of your development work, which can be dangerous, but also you do avoid a lot of the pitfalls of bringing in a co-founder too early who messes everything up. Yeah.
Okay, great. And do you have any suggestions for a template or sample business plans for a startup website?
That's another good question. I would probably just Google it. I don't have anything in this presentation. If someone wants to email me, they can. I guess the number one thing I would say to people is if there's more questions or you want to have a discussion about anything, I'm happy to make myself available, when possible. connect with me on LinkedIn. That, the business plan template question is something I've done before, and I just Google it. There's best practices. There's people who do them a little differently, but if you Google it, you'll probably see, a few in the top 3 results that, you can get a basic idea of what should be included, at least the main sections. That's the way to start.
Okay, and do you have any thoughts on building a commission-only sales force due to cash constraints?
Yeah, I mean, again, a lot of this comes back to the industry that you're in, and I'll try to be, helpful, but it's not always going to apply. There's in different industries where, sales forces are necessary, whether it's on the phone, digital isn't available, or it doesn't work as well. You can find businesses that all they do is give you access to a sales network. It's different by industry, but the idea is, again, Google it a little bit, find people who are involved in sales who know a little bit about, the different types of businesses out there that work in sales. You could outsource the sales force in the beginning, and some businesses do that very successfully. But again, you got to make sure that you have your messaging down. You know what converts. The business and the network that you're working with actually knows the right way to approach selling, and they represent your business properly. So again, Google it. Start talking to people in sales. I guarantee you they'll give you the right recommendation before too long. And it actually can be very beneficial. Make sure you do it right.
Okay. So if someone wants to start up in the tech field, do they need to acquire specific tech knowledge? How much coding/CS background does a startup manager need to have at a minimum?
That's another good question. Good questions, everybody. This one, it changes based upon what you're trying to accomplish, who you're working with. I think it's always a good idea to know a little bit about everything. I mean, if you don't already know how to program and code, chances are you're not going to be able to learn it fast enough to make a significant enough difference on your business, depending on how fast you're growing. But you do want to understand the core components. Be able to speak to it, and again, talk a little bit. There's courses out there. General Assembly is a great business. It's General Assembly. Just Google it. They have online courses that says, I think they title it Programming for Non-Programmers. So it kind of walks you through some of the general ideas, what you should know, what you need to know, and the more you can speak to it, the better you'll be prepared when you do have to hire the right person, or you want to be involved in the conversations around product development, business development, et cetera, and you understand why those things work the way they do. So I understand the need there, and I would say just take a couple online courses and make sure that you know some of the basics. You'll never know everything, but be able to talk to technical people with at least a little confidence. But you can't know everything, so.
Okay. Thoughts on crowdfunding or crowd marketing, Devin?
Crowdfunding or crowd marketing? I'm just starting to get familiar with crowd marketing. I think it's awesome if people buy into it right, and then that kind of feeds back into crowdfunding. It can be very powerful. There's a viral element. It can be a lot of fun. And there's different types of crowdfunding at this point, but it's definitely an opportunity in the equity world. If you want to, own part of a business, you're starting to see that come to fruition based upon different rules and regulations changing, which is exciting, but also it's scary because a lot of people don't know how to properly leverage that opportunity. So people are going to be taken advantage of. They don't understand what they're getting. As a user, I love crowdfunding and crowd marketing. I think there's an awesome opportunity in there to get people excited if you curate and present it in the right way. But also, people, again, don't always know what they're getting. So I think it's a fad. I think it's going to change a little bit. There's actually an awesome Georgetown Hoya, Steve DiPiango, who had a successful crowdfunding campaign through Kickstarter. And seeing him go through that process was amazing. I mean, he worked his butt off to get to success, but he did a good job curating it. He benefited from it. He got the word out. They're in production of a web video series, and I'm excited to see the result after the fact and see if they do another crowdfunding because it was difficult but rewarding.
Okay. Are business cards a thing of the past? Is there a better way of staying current?
That's another good question. Unfortunately, business cards, I mean, are not the way of the past. I mean, eventually, and I work a lot on mobile initiatives. Eventually, the idea is hopefully it's just, you know, like if anybody has an Android phone with an NFC chip, a near-field communications chip, you could probably just touch your phone to the other person's phone and exchange information. You don't have a pile of business cards on your desk when you get home, which is really a pain in the butt. But until everyone has that same software and workable hardware, business cards are still the best way to keep track of stuff. And this kind of goes back to those Gmail tools that I recommended. A lot of that will help you avoid having to manually enter people's information, which is, again, I mean, important because you want to get their information, but it can be a big time suck. So in the near future, business cards, like I have them, I give them out all the time. I don't like getting them as much. Obviously, they're important, but it's more about the data entry piece. So for now, business cards absolutely necessary. Hopefully, in the not too distant future, we won't need them anymore.
Okay. And Devin, if someone has an idea for an app, do you have any recommendations for where they should go to start developing that app?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of resources to use. I'm trying to figure out good places to go. There's so many. So this is kind of the business I'm in right now. I guess ideally, whoever asked that question, if you want to talk to me individually, please reach out. But I guess you can initially do the research. It's the same thing we just went through on the business and the opportunity. If you see yourself being mobile first or mobile only, it's a very, very different animal than being web first, because it could be more expensive to develop. And if you want to talk about what those expenses are and the opportunity around that, it changes drastically based upon what you're trying to achieve and who your audience is. So again, it's a conversation with someone like me, or go to a mobile agency or mobile development firm, have a little introductory discussion with them, see what might be involved, and see if you can eke out that MVP, that first version of your product, and what it might cost. The cost might surprise you, unfortunately. But yeah, that's probably the way I would go. Talk to an agency or a developer, see if they have some ideas on what it might cost, what it might look like. If you like it, that's great. If not, feel free to reach out to me, and I'll walk you through the process a little deeper.
Okay, well, Devin, I will ask you one last question. I know we're almost out of time, and this might be a long answer, but maybe you can shorten it. Out of all the steps you discussed today, what area did you most struggle with, and do you have any tips on how you overcame that?
Another good question.
Everybody today has great questions.
I know.
So thank you to all the participants.
I guess, I mean, yeah, in the beginning, the vision and idea is probably, back to one of the earlier questions, is, what's the right way to go? Because you don't want to waste any time. I would say that's probably the most challenging part, because there's so many ideas and so many opportunities that we see. What's the right one to start putting your efforts behind? So personally, that's been the biggest challenge, because there's so many things that I would like to do, and I'm sure our audience is the same. So, I mean, a lot of it comes back to saying, what fits well with what I'm currently doing? So what can I test easily? So working in mobile now, if I have an idea for mobile, I'll probably be more likely to test that than an idea for e-commerce, even though I have that experience. I have those resources available to me. And you'll obviously, as you kind of walk back through the presentation, which you'll get later, you'll see some of those steps really stick out. You'll start to get feedback. You realize who your network is. But it really comes back, the hardest part in the beginning is picking which vision and idea to test against, and really put those first 30 days into.
All right. Well, Devin, thank you so much for joining us today and telling us your story. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on the line, and make sure you tune in to the rest of the webinars in the entrepreneurship series. You can just visit the Georgetown Alumni Facebook page to get a full listing of events. We will be hearing from a lot of exciting entrepreneurs this year. So thank you, everyone, and have a good day.
Thank you.